If you are an author, a speaker, a coach, or an entrepreneur of any kind, and you're interested in creating celebrity for yourself or deliberately, systematically, and methodically increasing your celebrity, then you're going to really enjoy this presentation. Because in this presentation, I'm going to introduce you to an unknown, middle-aged, self-published guy with no TV experience who has been able to deliberately, systematically, and methodically increase his level of celebrity to the point where he routinely gets invited to appear on major television stations such as NBC New York, CBS Los Angeles, Fox Dallas, and national television shows, all without the help or expense of a PR agency or publicity firm representing him. I'm also going to introduce you to other relatively, quote-unquote, unknown people, regular men and women across the country who are appearing on dozens of TV shows in just a year's time, building their celebrity, building their brand, promoting their causes, promoting their messages, deliberately, systematically, and methodically building their celebrity because they understand the value of what most people would consider to be magic, lightning in a bottle, celebrity.
This is our new best friend here, Clint Arthur.
Folks, I am that middle-aged guy, and I'm showing you these clips of me appearing on stations all across the country, not to impress you, but to impress upon you that when I began this adventure in January of 2010, I hired a publicist, and she said to me, Clint, you are never going to get on those national shows or even on in New York or Los Angeles because you're nobody. You're a middle-aged guy with a self-published book, no TV experience, nobody's ever heard of you. They're not going to put you on those shows. And yet, little more than 2 years later, I am appearing on those shows without anybody's help. And I'm booking myself on those shows using my systematic formula for creating and increasing celebrity. And in this presentation, I am going to introduce you to the concept of manufacturing celebrity, of deliberately building your celebrity. I'm going to introduce you to my students who I have taught how to do exactly that. I will show you and I will teach you the 7 secrets of creating celebrity using television, including my exact algebraic formula for getting booked as a guest on TV news interviews anytime you want.
Clint Arthur, you're the best.
Oh,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much for being here. We just love him,
My
don't
pleasure.
That's Dan Kennedy with me in the photo. And Dan Kennedy is the marketing guru to all the top marketing gurus in the world today. Any guy who's on the internet making a bunch of money has spent a lot of money studying and participating in mastermind groups with Dan Kennedy. And Dan Kennedy says, if you are not deliberately, systematically, methodically, or rapidly and dramatically establishing yourself as a celebrity, at least to your clientele and target market, you're asleep at the wheel, ignoring what's fueling the entire economy around you, neglecting development of a measurably valuable asset. Then the question, do you have a plan you're following, working, implementing step by step to make yourself a bigger celebrity? If not, why not? If not now, when? Celebrity is defined as a famous person or the state of being well known. His prestige and celebrity has grown. Even in the dictionary definition of celebrity, they talk about the concept of growing your celebrity. The first secret of celebrity is that all celebrities have one thing in common. They are all on television. If you are not on TV, you are not a celebrity. You may be a YouTube star. You could be a famous blogger. You could be a rock star. But unless you're on TV, you are not a celebrity. Now, who's that celebrity on the couch? That's a big movie star we all know named Tom Cruise. Movie stars go on TV to promote what they're doing and to connect with the people. Howard Stern goes on TV to promote stuff. Radio personalities go on TV to promote stuff, to appear on television. That's J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter book series, a huge literary celebrity. And she goes on television to promote her stuff and to connect with people and to increase her celebrity. That's the boss, Bruce Springsteen, on TV, promoting his stuff, connecting with people. One of the richest guys in the world takes time to appear on television and to promote his celebrity. Politicians go on TV to connect with the people. They go on TV. This is a very famous author. His name is David Bach. He's had 11 New York Times best-selling books, and he became a regular on the Today Show on television. And he did it because TV is where celebrities are seen by people. If you're on TV, then you must be a celebrity. That's the analogy that goes on in a person's head. If they see someone on TV, then that person must be a celebrity. And so, my position is that if you can get on TV, then you will become a celebrity. Maybe you're not going to start out being a celebrity on the scope of Tom Cruise or Donald Trump, but TV is a skill. TV is a skill like any other skill in the world. When you started out learning how to walk, did you start out running marathons? No, you walked a couple of steps into your mama's arms, then you learned how to walk across the living room, then you learned how to walk around the block, then you learned how to walk to school, and then you ran around the gym track, and you learned how to run a mile, and then you worked your way up until finally you could run a marathon. That's the way it works. In life, you don't start out running marathons. You start out taking a few steps, because even the longest journey begins with the first step. And TV is a skill where you can start out on little tiny stations and work your way up to the bigger shows and then on to national shows. Now, when I talked to David Bach in New York a couple of months ago, he told me that before he got on Oprah and his career really blew up, he had been on every TV show in America. That's a direct quote from David Bach. And what was so awesome about that for him, he continued, was that by the time he got on Oprah, he was great at being on TV. He knew how to push people's buttons with demonstrations and props. He had honed his message in the process of doing, quote, every TV show in America before he got on Oprah. And that's what I'm in the process of doing. I've done 40 shows in the last 2.5 years. Now, these are some of my students, regular people who I've been teaching how to work their way up. There's Ellen Rohr. She's done more than 20 segments. I just got an email from her today. She just got invited to do her first national show. Above her is Daryl Noak. He's done actually 29 segments in this point, all across America, sharing his message of gratitude. Above him, Chris and Katrin. Chris and Katrin don't even have a book. They've done 16 segments across the country without even having a book. They teach people how to make toasts at important events like weddings and on New Year's Eve. There's Veronica Gray. She's done 30 segments across the United States, including Los Angeles, and she booked herself on the LA station because I booked myself on there, and she wrote to them and said, "Thanks for booking my mentor, Clint Arthur, on your show." And then they booked her right on to talk about shark safety. Then there's Rich Steinhoff. He's had a 30-year career in real estate, and before that he was an engineer in the Apollo space program. Not a spring chicken. Yet he was able to book himself on 4 shows in Palm Springs and Palm Desert, and then he bagged the elephant and booked himself on Fox Los Angeles by leaving a voicemail message the way I taught him to. And it took him less than 3 months to make that happen. That's what happens when you have the right training, when you have the right teacher. You can accelerate your timeline and your success in television. Now, it took me almost 2 years to book myself onto the LA station. Rich Steinhoff managed to do it in 3 months because he was my student. Celebrity is just another name for brand awareness. Consumer products companies use advertising to create brand awareness for their products. They use advertising on television to create a celebrity for their products. But because it's not a person, it's not called celebrity. It's called brand awareness. The more advertising on TV they use, the bigger the brand awareness is for their product. For a person to create awareness of their personal brand, we call that celebrity. And it's very easy to determine how big a celebrity is. All you have to do is see how much television they do. The more TV appearances they have, the more well-known their brand is, the bigger a celebrity they are. Celebrity is just another name for personal brand awareness. The third secret of celebrity is that there are only two types of celebrities: those for whom celebrity occurs and those for whom celebrity is created. Celebrities who have celebrity occur for them are often participants in scandals or crimes. Sometimes they marry a celebrity or become friends with a celebrity, and as a result of their exposure with that other celebrity, the celebrity rubs off onto them. Monica Lewinsky and Lady Di are clear examples of this type of celebrity. The other kind of celebrity is a manufactured celebrity. There are only two ways to manufacture celebrity. The first way is to have a giant corporation manufacture that celebrity for an individual. The second way is for an individual to manufacture the celebrity for themselves. Major corporations manufacture celebrity for individuals by repeatedly and frequently placing them on reality television programming events such as professional sports broadcasts and the wide variety of reality TV shows and contests which proliferate prime time. Then, the news programs of those networks report the results of those very same contests, thereby expanding the celebrity of the participants. The Librarian of Congress, Daniel Boorstin, wrote a book about celebrity called The Image, in which he stated, "Celebrity status is artificially producible by media publicity. Anyone may become a celebrity if only he or she manages to get into the news and stay there." Which brings us straight into the perfect storm of economic recession and technological advances, reducing the power and budgets of major publishers and music companies, combining that with the individual empowerment of YouTube, iTunes, and Kindle publishing to give individual artists and other enterprising content creators the ability to have their work seen by lots of people without the need for major corporations to be involved in their promotion. This threw the doors to TV newsrooms wide open and leads us to secret number 4 of TV celebrity. Today, you do not need to be a superstar or even famous in order to get on TV news anymore. And secret number 5, you do not need to have a publicist represent you. In fact, it is actually to your advantage to represent yourself so that the producers can feel your passion when you are pitching them over the phone. On television, as in all of life, nothing sells better than enthusiasm. Secret number 6 of TV celebrity: the more TV you do, the more TV you will do. A celebrity with a large audience becomes more and more valuable to each viewer as he or she attracts even more viewers. This is called the bandwagon effect. The more popular an upcoming celebrity is expected to be, the more valuable he or she becomes for others. And this fuels further popularity in a virtuous cycle. The more celebrity you create for yourself, the more celebrity you'll be able to create for yourself. Which brings us to secret number 7 of TV publicity: my algebraic equation for getting on television. This is the exact algebraic equation that I and my students use to get on television anytime we want. Anyone can use this formula, regardless of whether you are rich or poor, famous or unknown, an experienced pro or a complete novice. And in the next video, I'm going to explain exactly every element of that equation. But this is a real thing. The elements of that equation are hooks, celebrities, props, demonstrations, and a takeaway or formula. And if you put all of those things together, it equals you on TV. And I'm going to explain every one of those things to you in detail in the next video. Getting on TV using this formula has been successful for the following types of people, businesses, and authors: real estate agents, makeup artists, filmmakers, painters, lawyers, accountants, dentists, clothing designers, environmental activists, entrepreneurs, life coaches, business coaches, speech coaches, health coaches, gourmet food executives, corporate executives, HR experts, computer consultants, hair extension stylists, authors of Alzheimer's books, business and diet, self-help, self-esteem, Kindle publishing, travel, leadership, politics, children's picture books, sleep, beauty, business planning, law of attraction, and many other genres of books. Folks, your business is no different. Your book is no different. Your passion is no different. Anything can be promoted on television if you know how to use my formula. I'm going to show you that you can and how you can manufacture celebrity by using my exact formula of getting on TV, how to leverage your time and income with the power of mass media, and how to create media hits that can make you proud, how to rocket your career and your life to the next level, and how to create the confidence that only comes from being a hot and relevant celebrity. I'm going to teach you how to do it. I'm going to introduce you to people who've done it with me, and then I'm going to offer you an opportunity to join our community of growing celebrities and to work with me to methodically, dramatically, systematically transform you into a bigger and bigger celebrity. This will create a platform for you. It will position you as an expert in whatever field you want, and it will allow you to promote your passions and your interests on television anytime you want. That's one of my mentors. I've invested a lot of money in the past couple of years on training with the best people, and he's one of the very best speaker trainers in the world. His name is Tom Antion. He's done over 3,000 presentations, and he trains at the National Speakers Association meetings, and he said something to me that was very interesting. He said, Clint, the number one thing you've got to watch out for in trying to entice people to study with you about how to get on TV is that they're going to say, yeah, of course Clint could do it. He's so slick. He's so put together. But I couldn't do that. I'm not as slick as him. I'm not as good a speaker. I'm not as well put together as he is. Well, that was a huge compliment for me because another one of my mentors was Brendon Burchard. And Brendon Burchard is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Millionaire Messenger. And I remember when I went to my first Brendon Burchard event in April of 2010, and I looked at Brendon up on the stage and thought to myself, man, of course Brendon can be up there on the stage doing what he does, but I couldn't do that. I'm not as slick as him. I'm not as put together as him. Well, I'm happy to share with you that just last weekend, I was on stage immediately following Brendon Burchard at an event called Author 101 University. There were 350 registered attendees at that event, and Brendon Burchard was the opening speaker on Friday morning, and I was the very next speaker on the main stage right after Brendon Burchard. What a huge honor that was. But it just goes to show you that everybody has these doubts. Everybody is saying to themselves, who am I to be doing that? Who am I to think that I could get on TV anytime I want? I'm telling you, I have had that same question and those same doubts in my mind. When I first started trying to book myself on TV, I kept hearing in my mind, who am I to be trying to book myself on TV? I remember when I got my first booking on TV. I'll tell you more about that, but I remember looking at the email and thinking to myself, do they really want me on TV? Why would they want me on TV? Who am I? Well, to answer that question, I need to ask you a question. Where were you on December 31st, 1999? Were you at the ATM getting that Y2K money out in case all the ATMs went down? Were you at a party drinking good champagne with family and friends? On the night of the new millennium, I was a cab driver in Los Angeles. And at the end of that night, I went home to this little boat I was living on at the time because that was the cheapest way to survive in LA. It was $282 a month. But the only problem was there was no electricity, running water, or toilet facilities on the boat. And I went back to that boat and crawled into bed under my heaviest down comforter. I pulled out a book to try to calm down and read. And that book was Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. And as I lay there reading by the light of the flashlight, I got distracted by my breath as it was condensing in the night air. And I started thinking back over my journey of how I got to be a taxi driver on the new millennium, on New Year's Eve of the new millennium. How did that happen to me? See, the author of that book was my creative writing teacher in high school. That's a photograph of our classroom. And he inspired me to want to be the New York Times best-selling author and a great writer. Then after I graduated from Stuyvesant, I went on to get a 4.0 GPA and graduate from the Wharton Business School, where another one of my best-selling author idols had also gone to school, Donald Trump, and all his kids. Donald Trump, the author of The Art of the Deal and many other New York Times best-selling books, was a graduate of that same business school. And so he helped to elevate my ambition. Not only now was I going to become a best-selling author and a great writer, I was going to become a really wealthy best-selling author and writer. Then the era of independent films occurred, and I had a new idol. His name was Spike Lee. He wasn't just a screenwriter, he was also a movie star. And that became my new goal, my new ambition to become a wealthy, famous screenwriter and movie star like my idol Spike Lee. And that got me to move out to Los Angeles, where I banged my head up against the brick wall of the Hollywood dream for over a decade. And at the end of that time, there I was on New Year's Eve, driving a cab. And I had been a cab driver for 5 years. And that night, as I was laying in bed under that heavy down comforter, I felt like the biggest loser in the world. I felt completely alone. And I started crying. How had my life gone so wrong? How was I ever going to get back on track and achieve some of my potential? How could I stop having to be a taxi driver? I didn't know what I was going to do, but I swore an oath to myself that I was going to do everything I possibly could do to change how I was showing up in this world. And the first thing I did was I said, I'm not going to be a writer anymore. I'm just going to focus on making money. And the next thing I did was I said, I'm going to embark on a huge personal growth and personal development program for myself. So I started doing everything I possibly could. I walked on fire with Tony Robbins himself. I did Toltec wisdom studies with Don Miguel Ruiz himself. I did men's power circles, and I stayed involved with the men's power and self-help movement for many years. And sure enough, things began to change for me. As I changed who I was on the inside, so did the external circumstances of my life began to change on the outside. I got involved in the gourmet food industry, and these became some of my friends and clients. On the far left is the executive chef at Caesar's Palace. Next to him is a James Beard Award nominee. The big guy there is the executive chef at the Bellagio. And to this day, if you eat any bread and butter at the Bellagio, that's my product. The butter is my product. See, I became very successful in the gourmet food industry, and as I started making money, naturally I met an amazing woman, and we got married. There's a picture of us there at the Grammy Awards last year, and she encouraged me to get involved in real estate. So I started building houses during the great real estate boom, and I built a lot of houses and made a bunch of money. And everything looked really great on paper in my life, except for that there was something that was missing on paper, and that was my book. Because inside, I still had this secret dream of wanting to be a great and famous writer. And finally, in 2008, I said to myself, you know what? I haven't written anything in 8 years, and I can't take it anymore. I'm a writer. I want to write my book about the things I learned that helped me to become successful in my entrepreneurial career. And in 2008, I wrote this book, What They Teach You at the Wharton Business School. How to be an entrepreneur, start a successful business, sell more than the competition, make more money, have more fun, and be a better, happier person. Those were all the things I learned at the best business school in the world, and I wanted to share them. So I wrote that book in 2008, and for 2 years, nothing happened. Nobody bought the book. And I'm thinking there to myself, how is this possible? I've got the greatest book about the greatest business education in the world, and nobody's buying it? And then I heard an interview with Jack Canfield, who said in order to get Chicken Soup for the Soul to become a best-selling book, they made a commitment that they were going to go on TV and radio and in the newspapers. They were going to do interviews. They were going to do media. They were going to do anything they could do to promote their book every single day. And so I realized that I had to start marketing the book more efficiently, more deliberately, more systematically. And so I started spending money on promoting the book. It made sense, The marketing of what we do is much more important than what we actually do. So I ponied up $3,500 for a radio campaign, and that did not get me a lot of sales. So I called up my publicist in New York. She was a pay-for-placement publicist. When she booked you on something, you paid her. And I said, "Hey, Annie, I want you to book me on Good Morning America." And she said, "Clint, you are never going to get on Good Morning America. You're a self-published author with a book nobody's ever heard of, that nobody's ever bought. You're a middle-aged guy with no TV experience. You're not famous. You're not a movie star or a politician. Nobody knows who you are, and they're never going to put you on Good Morning America." I said, "What's it cost, Annie?" And she said, $2,500, but I'm telling you, I cannot do it. I said, "I'm willing to pay." And she said, "All right, Clint, I'll try." A week later, she calls me back and she says, "Clint, I told you I could not get you on Good Morning America. And when I tried to pitch you on that show, they laughed at me." I said, "All right, Annie, well, what about New York or LA? You know, I'm a native New Yorker. My wife and I have a home in LA. Those are my hometowns. Can you get me on either one of my hometown stations so I can go on and start promoting this book?" And she goes, "Clint, New York and LA are the same as national shows. Those are the number one and number two markets in America, and they are never going to put you on their air. You're a middle-aged guy nobody's ever heard of with a self-published book nobody's ever bought. You have no TV experience. You're not famous. They're not going to put you on." I said, "I'm willing to pay." She goes, "Look, it's the same $2,500 if I can get you on in New York or LA, but I'm telling you, it's not going to happen." 5 days later, she calls me back and confirmed it. It did not happen. They were not interested in Clint Arthur. And then I don't know why, but I had this inspiration. She didn't say it. She didn't recommend that I try to get onto smaller stations, but somehow I made the connection in my mind. And I said, "Hey, what if I go to some smaller city? Could you book me on TV in a smaller city so I can get some TV experience so they can see how great I am on TV?" And then she said, "Now that I can do. And it's only $1,500 to book you on those little local stations in the little cities." And I said, "Awesome." A couple days later, I got that email and it said, "Congratulations, you're booked on ABC Phoenix." And I remember deliberately standing there, looking at that email, thinking to myself, really? Why would they want to put me on TV? I'm nobody. I have no experience. I got a self-published book nobody's ever bought. Why would they want to put me on TV? Well, here's a picture of me in my second appearance on Fox Sacramento. Now look at me in there. I do not look like a very engaging person on TV, do I? That's my prop, that little BMW X5 model on the desk in front of me. That was the prop I had. Not a very good prop. Look at my suit hanging on me like a sack of potatoes. Look at my hair. What hair? Look at my smile. What smile? Do I look comfortable, happy, and engaging? No. This was my second appearance. I was terrible. And after having Annie book me on 4 shows, I had spent a total of $6,000 on TV publicity. And at the end of that, I said to my wife, "Honey, if I'm going to ever get on Good Morning America, I'm going to have to get a whole lot better at this TV stuff." And she goes, "Yeah, but at $1,500 a pop, that's a very expensive education. Can't you try booking yourself on these TV shows?" It took me several months to do it, but I started to get successful in booking myself on these shows. And as I started getting more and more successful and doing more and more shows, I started to understand what they were wanting. And after about 2 years, almost to the day, I booked myself on NBC New York. Now look at the difference between me on NBC New York and me when I began in Sacramento. And I didn't have to pay Annie or anybody to get booked on that show. I sent an email to the producer, and she replied back to me, "Can we do this at 30 Rock with Chuck?" And that's the transformation that's available for you. That's the possibility that's available for you. You can go from booking yourself on little tiny shows and not doing very well, all the way up to the biggest shows in the number one market and doing great. And I tell you from the bottom of my heart, if I can do it, you can do it. And what that's done for me in the past 2 years, little more than 2 years, is that it's enabled me to double my food company sales. Yeah, I promote the butter company on television, And I'll talk more about that later, but I'm telling you, if I can promote butter on TV, you can promote anything on TV. It's also allowed me to sell 35,488 Kindle books in January 2012. This is one of the books that I sold, The Income Doubler, How to Double Your Income in 180 Days. There's another book I sold called The Greatest Book of All Time. And these are my actual Kindle Direct Publishing statistics for the month of January 2012. I sold 27,187 units of The Greatest Book of All Time and 8,085 units of The Income Doubler. See, when you go on TV, you get magical superpowers. In addition to being able to sell books, people actually return your sales calls. That's how I was able to double my butter company sales. You also gain self-confidence and poise. I did not look self-confident and poised when I was in Sacramento, but I sure did in New York City. You gain status in your community. Imagine when you're at a family reunion or a PTA meeting after having done 20 or 30 local TV appearances in your city, how you might gain status. Or in your company, when all the other executives are just regular executives, but you keep appearing as an expert in your field on the news, how would that increase your status? It connects you with the best you. It helps you to cut off the rough edges from your personality in those presentations that you'll be watching over and over on television. It also connects you with the raison d'etre of your life, your true purpose, the reason you are who you are here on this earth, whatever your message may be. By going on TV, David Bach said it enabled him to really connect with what his true message was. It also helps you to grow hair. When you meet me in person, take a look at the top of my head. I do not have a beautiful full head of hair like I do in this picture. Man, I remember when I was watching the replay of this interview, I was cringing, waiting for my horrible bald spot to show up right there. But for some reason, even my hair grew to a new level of personal power when I appeared on NBC New York. In addition to all the other super magical powers, you also can make more sales by being on TV. I've sold butter, I've sold books. Many people sell many things on television. That's no secret. It also helps you to get opt-ins. Ellen Rohr said one show she did got her 50 opt-ins, more than any other appearance has ever garnered for her. It allows you to write off vacations. It gets you free vacations. In fact, the picture there is a hotel suite at the beautiful Las Brisas Resort in Acapulco. And I mentioned Las Brisas on a couple of my appearances earlier this year, and they were kind enough to offer me an all-expense-paid vacation in that exact suite. And I'll be leaving for that vacation at the end of November with my wife for 10 days. And that's one of the things that's possible for you when you know how to do this stuff. It also allows you to hone your message. It enables you to build your platform. It prepares you for national media and the larger shows that you're going to do as you get more and more shows. You get better and better, and it prepares you for the bigger shows, and it instantly turns you into a celebrity. You don't start off like Tom Cruise, but you will definitely start off as somebody special because you're on the news. Now, how do you do this? How do you get on TV? Well, I've taught lots of regular people how to do it. Here's a picture of me teaching at the National Publicity Summit. This is absolutely the epitome of publicity training. They train you with some of the best trainers in the world, and they had me training the people who had paid $6,000 to attend this summit on exactly how to do this. In the next video, I'm going to show you and explain to you my exact algebraic formula of how to get on TV to transform yourself into an instant television celebrity so that you can make a difference and a fortune sharing your message on television.